right, that's Officer Oletta. He was found guilty of culpable negligence, facing up to 1 year in jail because it's a misdemeanor down in Florida, but found not guilty on the felony charges of attempted manslaughter of 2 people. Let's talk about this because next Tuesday is time for sentencing here. So let's get into the punishment phase of our program with our think tank. All right, let me lay this out for you first. The plea offer that he got, okay, was 1 year probation. Never become a police officer again. Just give that up. He said no to that, went to trial. Now he is where he is, guilty of culpable negligence. What should happen to him? Is this someone who should be locked up?
Yeah, that's hard to say. I mean, I think he was absolutely negligent. I don't think that he should be doing any time, but I think he needs to be doing a heck of a lot of community service and probably getting out there on this topic of mental health issues and trying to maybe teach people how to pull back a little bit and think before you speak and act.
What's fair here?
I mean, look, he got acquitted of the serious stuff, convicted of a misdemeanor, if he has, which I assume he has absolutely no record. If
Right.
he has no prior issues with internal affairs, I mean, probation is probably appropriate. Nobody died, and he could do a lot more good for society by doing several hundred hours of community service. And I'd hope that the police officer would be very accepting and apologize for his actions to the court and to the victim.
Now, Lieutenant Colonel, whenever there's a police shooting, right, it makes news. It's the headlines. Local news, it's all over. I worked in local news. Police shooting, boom, we're there, right? It's covered. And with social media and everything, every shooting now is looked at so closely, and there's almost a presumption in society now that every police shooting is bad, right? I mean, that's so. What is that doing to the morale of the men and women who are, you know, whose job it is, who've signed up to serve and protect us?
It hurts morale. My biggest concern is that you have officers who may be in a situation where they're justified in using deadly force. And they may hesitate with the worry that, hey, if I pull this trigger, or is the DA going to indict me? Or am I going to be all on Facebook and Instagram as the officer that shot this guy that was unarmed? Because there are some instances where you can shoot an unarmed person where you're justified. And they're explained, and officers know that. But in the heat of the moment, you know, if I would fear if an officer didn't use deadly force to save their own life or the life of another person, and it turns out that, you know, they should have, and you get a bad result.
Yeah, it's really a fine line. Now, you go to where we're talking about here, Miami-Dade area. I believe this is the first police officer to be indicted since like 1989 for an officer-involved shooting. So it hasn't happened in a while. So what's the message now? Let's look at the big picture of what's happening in society, right? Because that's the reason we're covering this, right? Officer-involved shooting, boom, we're covering it, and it became a trial here. So where are we? And it gets back to my original point that I was making about where that line is between someone doing their job and making a mistake and someone committing a crime. Where should that line be? What should the test be? How do we analyze what is a crime versus what is someone who, again, made a mistake at work?
A police officer has a license to use deadly force and to kill. That's what we want them because they're there to serve and protect the public. But a police officer also has signed up for an inherently dangerous job, and they know they have that license to kill, so they need to make sure in that heat of the moment, I'm not a police officer, but to evaluate the situation, and training has to be better. This police officer had an error of judgment, and the jury found him to be negligent. I mean, it's a case-by-case basis. There's no standard bearer of this is someone who committed a crime. Yeah, you shoot somebody in the back when they're running away. It's pretty obvious, right? Is the public in danger? Is the gun being pointed? Those are all factors the jury's looking at. But what this police officer kept testifying about, and they kept making a point about, was from his vantage point, from what he saw, it looked like it was a gun. Negligence.
I don't think it should be any difference between a regular citizen and a police officer. The test should be, did you really mean to take this person's life with malice? Did you mean to cause them harm and violate their civil rights or whatever when you did what you did. If the answer is no, then you made a mistake. You made a mistake at work, just like you said. If the answer is yes, then you did something criminal. You went beyond the scope of your job.
Where do you think that line, because what I see happening right now is it seems like the line keeps moving, and you know there are cases now that are under scrutiny where it seems like, well, yeah, they were the person who was shot by police had a gun. I've seen stories bubbling up on social media where the person actually had a gun in their hand and is shot by police, and people are questioning that and wondering why this officer is not being indicted. It just seems like the line is moving. Where should it be, and should it be readjusted?
I think the line is moving. I think, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of, or there's been a lot of media coverage of officers who, unfortunately, have done the wrong thing. And so then we're kind of putting that on everyone, as we were saying earlier, that there's really only a couple bad apples. And then, unfortunately, our sensitivity gets heightened to this. And so now we're going to start pushing that line over because of our heightened sensitivity and what we're seeing. And again, we live in a time where everyone has a phone. Everyone can catch everything. So the days of not really knowing what went on and not having different vantage points to a situation have disappeared. And so I think it makes us a heck of a lot less tolerant.
Yeah, and what are your thoughts about body cams?
I think they are valuable, highly valuable. We need to have them everywhere. Every department should have body cameras because they can tell a story that you can't. That camera has a memory, and it's going to internalize it on the memory card or whatever, and you'll be able to watch it over again, and you'll be able to see the truth, as opposed to what you believe the truth was when it happened. Because as you said earlier, we see different things and we remember different things, and sometimes our memory isn't what actually happened. We've had officers to say they only shot their weapon 3 times when they shot it 15 times. Well, they don't remember shooting the 15 times. So they're not lying when they say I shot it 3 times.
You know, I like the body cams because I think it does 2 things. It protects the public, and it also protects police who are doing their jobs. So what do you think the long-lasting impact is of this verdict? Does this verdict have an impact? Does this have any sort of impact on the way society sees these cases and the way police respond to all this?
I don't think this verdict does. I think this is, again, I find it appalling what happened. The guy had his hands up. That's what he's supposed to do, surrendering. But it came down to, it was just an error in judgment, and it was negligence, criminal negligence, and he probably that was probably the right verdict. I think the Parkland case coming up is really going to be, that's going to set the tone for law enforcement coming up. If Scott Peterson is convicted of an omission and being a coward, that's going to create a chilling effect for law enforcement everywhere.
All right. Big thanks to the think tank tonight. Danielle Moss, Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee, Lawrence Zimmerman. Appreciate it, folks. All right.